Hello everybody, today I'm going to talk about the machine translation model for Cantonese English pair. This is the outline of my presentation. First I will talk about the introduction, then the methodology, afterwards the project status, and finally the conclusion of my project. Introduction. So the basic background. The language status of the Cantonese is that it is the 18th largest language considering the number of speakers in the world, and there are many active research of Cantonese linguistics. And about the computational aspect, some popular software such as Siri and Google Assistants that support Cantonese input. However, there are not many available resources on the machine translation of Cantonese. There is only two platforms, which are Microsoft and Baidu, that support Cantonese translation. And here is an example photo. So, what exactly is machine translation, or MT? It was developed since the 1960s, and its goal is to translate natural human language. There are different limitations of machine translation, such as the translation direction, the amount of languages, and how much linguistic knowledge should be involved in the translation process. So I will talk about the previous studies of Cantonese translation. The first one is Polio MT99. It was developed in 1999, which is probably the first MT systems for Cantonese English pair. And based on it, another MT model called Lancome MT05 was proposed, and it was developed in 2005. However, I consider these two as unreliable resources because they use non-Cantonese sentences in their translation process. Methodology. So, there are many different variants of MT, and here are some of the most popular variants, including RBMT, EBMT, SMT, and NMT. Different MT systems have their own pros and cons and different architecture. So, I will choose some particular platforms of these: the Aperion, Moses, and the TensorFlow with GRU, TensorFlow with Transformer model. These four types of MT systems in my project. I will implement, compare, and evaluate the results. So about the data collection, because there is no any open source corpus for bilingual material, bilingual material is essential for the training process. So, and the only available materials are mainly in written Chinese, which is different to spoken Cantonese considering the syntax and lexicon. So I propose to use Netflix subtitles of Cantonese movie. I will use a software called PyTranscriber for the Cantonese transcription, and I aim to collect over 1,000 sentences in my corpus. I will talk about the evaluation method. The human evaluation is not preferred in my evaluation due to its cost and unreliability. So I will stick with automatic evaluation of different matrices such as BLEU, WR, and NIST. These matrices will have a comparison of the performance of different MT systems, and this is an important training process for MT. Now I'll talk about my project status. So I've already collected all my data and installed all the MT systems. I'm keeping on my schedule. However, the data collection is harder than expected. Now I'll talk about some limitations and recommendations of my project. So the first one is the choice of MT models. Some of the models are already outdated, and only some famous models are covered in my project. The second one is the cost. The computational power and the time for training MT system is the main cost constraint in my project. The third one is data, which, because I use movies as my corpus, so the vocabularies are heavily based on the genre. So I recommend to construct a larger corpus to avoid the repeating the same vocabularies. And I will talk about future planning. I will train and test the MT models from December to February, evaluate and discuss my results from March to April, and at the end of the project, I hope to provide a foundation for future research. So in my presentation, I've talked about the introduction, including the basic background and previous studies, and then the methodology section includes different MT examples, the data collection method, and the evaluation method. And lastly, I'll talk about the project status of my current progress, the limitations and recommendations, and my future planning. So here are some references that I used. Thank you. This is the end of my presentation.